Torrey said were our teachers, but also I think Mr. Woodson and Mrs. Woodson, um, and a lot of the elder people in the neighborhood, because they always carried themselves well around us, and they taught us a lot. So I really don't have like one hero, because there were so many that you looked up to in the neighborhood. You looked up to a lot of the people, a lot of the elders in our neighborhood.
For me, was my parents, because they taught us that you had to respect everybody, regardless if they was your mother or father or not. If an elderly person said something to you, you had to respect them and do what they said. If you didn't, it would get back to them. You was in trouble. And then it just like spiraled on down, because then you start looking at all the leaders, and whatever they said, you would keep in your mind what your parents told you. Respect, respect. And that's how you learn how to respect everybody that was older than you, and if they told you to do something, you did it.
I think we always remember what our parents said. I always remember the things that my parents told me, and I also always remember that stick was gonna come if you didn't do what they told you to do.
Hey, we were just respectful of our elders, all of our elders.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
something that is missed on today's younger generations, to just not only have a respect for people, but to have a respect for property, and to have a respect for all things that are sacred. The church building, the flag, just everything, and everybody. I missed that time when there was discipline, but the discipline was through love. People corrected you because they wanted to set you on a straight path, and those things I hold dear to my heart. That while I might not have liked it at the time, I realize now as an adult how important it is to correct people when they're in the midst of making their mistakes and whatnot.
I don't know if you all remember or not, but I remember as a kid coming up, church at the graveyard, that church was never locked.
No.
You could go in there
Anytime
7
you
days a
wanted
week.
to, yes.
You didn't have to worry about nobody touching nothing the same way you left it. When you return, it would be there. Today, every church you got go to now, it's locked or got security around it.
Exactly.
Well, Mr. Frank, that was the same with our home. In the Guilford neighborhood, we never locked our home. I remember when I married my husband, Jerome, and he came to live he moved into my house, and the door was always unlocked, and and he couldn't believe it. He was like, why do you have this door unlocked? Of course, he lived in the city. And I was like, well, we don't lock our doors. And he just couldn't believe it. And it got to the point, like, if I just go out in the yard, maybe I went to the neighbor's house, and I come back, I try to get in my house, and the door, I said, well, who locked the door? Who left this door unlocked? I was like, we do not lock the doors. But, I mean, later, it came to the point where now you have to lock your door. But before, never. Even when you went to bed at night, that's not something you thought about, locking the door. No one came in your house. No one bothered you. No one came to steal things from you. But
Because we were like family.
nowadays, it's like, you better not leave your door unlocked.
Yeah,
You got that right.
ask for something, and it would be easy for someone to give you what you needed. But I do remember just walking right into people's homes.
Yeah.
You didn't have to knock, you just walked right in.
So what were some of your family and community traditions in Guilford?
For our family, going out on Sundays was something that we did every Sunday. Either we went to a show in Baltimore, or we drive through the tunnel, or visiting my mother's family in Law. Those were our traditions. But also, for the church, it was like the biggest thing was Children's Day, where we had to learn a verse and had to get up and sing and have dinner afterwards. Those things you never forget. Going to baptismal, when they had it in the churchyard and in the pool, and just everybody in the neighborhood came just to watch, the people get baptized and help celebrate with them. Those are things that you remember all the time.
I can recall always on weekends driving to like the zoo in Baltimore, or just going down Laurel to walk around and shop, not really buy anything, but just walk around stores and whatnot. Going up to Enchanted Forest on Saturdays.
Yeah,
a lot of the things we did as a family, we did through Scouts also. So I can remember doing trips to Luray Caverns and going through the Shenandoah Valley and whatnot. Once again, a lot of things were community based because it was Cub Scouts, which was a part of the church. So that's a lot of what we did.
And of course, taking that Sunday school trip once a year through the Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had to attend Sunday school in order to go to the trip. Because if you didn't come to Sunday school, then you had to pay to go on the trip. But if you came to Sunday school, then you got to go on the trip free.
Smart. That's smart.
I can conclude with all they said. The only one thing that I didn't like as a young boy, we had a baptismal pool at the church in the ground.
Tadpoles.
And you had to go down there and clean it out. Everything used to come up. But
Really, Frank, I never knew that.
huh?
John, you live right across the church.
I never knew that you had to clean it.
Yes, who was going to clean it?
We
I
had to
didn't
put,
know.
They had to clean
I
it.
was down in that water, frightened to death, traumatized.
they said, you gotta bucket it out. Bucket what out? Get all that out. It's got to be cleaned out because it had green slime and stuff.
Yeah. But we used to
Never
go
knew
over there and
that.
play in that pool all
Yes,
the
yes, the
time.
tadpoles and the
And watch
frogs.
the tadpoles turn to frogs. I mean,
Yes.
but then when
You
we were
learn.
like, they gonna go down in that water?
No,
Yeah.
they used to clean it out first before they
I
put
never knew that.
baptism. Yeah.
All I knew was when I got baptized, all I saw was the water, little tadpoles swimming around.
Well, they still would get back in there somehow, but they would clean it out because it would be green slime and
I missed
everything.
that part.
Yeah, by the time I came around, I was at the pool in the Doormat Carter Center, which would have been the church when I was small. Yeah.
Well, actually, when they, Reverend Webb baptized us, he took us to Baltimore. He didn't put us in the pool. Although it was still there, he took us to Baltimore.
That
Is
pool
it still there?
traumatized me.
Is
It's
the pool
there,
still
No.
they
there?
covered it
They covered it
with
in.
dirt. They put dirt over it.
So what was your religious life like in the Guilford community?
First Baptist Church of Guilford. That was and still is our life, coming here on Sunday mornings. Like I said before, while I wasn't always in church service, and at that time we only had the 11 o'clock service, if I remember correctly. Sunday school was at 9:30. My mom and grandmother and aunts and cousins, they were at church service. And after we participated in Sunday school, we would typically go to one of the relatives' houses to play while, in my opinion, they must have taken turns to go to church. So if I wasn't at our house on Mission Road or my grandmother's house down the bottom, then I'd have been at my cousin Kitty's house, hanging with her son, Kitty Catherine Peck.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, what was your religious life like in the Guilford community?
Like she said, Guilford Church. We were there for all the time, for everything. I joined the church when I was about 7 years old, and I joined because I wanted to sing on the choir. And the only way you could sing on the choir that time I was told I had to be a member of the church, so I joined and have been a member ever since. When I joined, I don't think I knew a lot about the church or God, but as I've grown over the years, I've learned a lot. So, but the church is my religious background.
Well, I came in the Guilford Church 1940 when I was born. My mother brought me there as a baby, and I've become in the Guilford Church ever since. I joined Guilford Church in 1955, and I've been a member ever since, over 60-some years.
Oh, wow.
So
And your
our whole family,
Mhm.
my mother brought us as babies into the church. And till we got grown of our age, she allowed you to, as you got married and moved on, you could pick a church of your own, but till then, you had to attend Guilford Church.
And the church was a family church because all of your family went there. And I know that my grandfather Jacob and his wife Sarah and all of their children went to church because I looked at some of the documents that the church have now. And my grandfather Jacob, he served as superintendent of Sunday school, as treasurer, as he was the secretary, and looking in his notes, I could see every Sunday that someone was at church, they had a P or present.
Yeah.
So they kept great records back then. They knew exactly everybody that came to church every Sunday, and all of his children were there. And then when his children started having children, you could see that their names started appearing in the books. And so, so family was always in church. So I guess that's something that was handed down. They went, their children went, their children went, and then I guess after they started having family, everyone just kept coming to that church.
Right, we had to come to church. It was
Yeah.
a choice. We were.
Yeah, it wasn't a
Coming to
choice.
church.
You didn't have a choice whether you. Nowadays the kids like, do I have to go? It's like you didn't have a choice. It's Sunday morning. You get up, get yourself ready, and get out the door and go in that church door.
Part of your responsibility, just like
Mhm.
going to school every day, you had to go to church on Sunday. And I know for myself, becoming an adult and deciding I'm not going to church, but I can remember having a conversation with my little sister, Stephanie at the time. Stephanie had to be about 6 years old, and she said, do you know my mom's church? And I said, of course I know your mother's church. Your mother's church is my church, the First Baptist Church of Guilford. And she said, how come I never see you there? I had to be about 22. I've been here ever since. So I left and came back. My little sister said that to me, and I've been a part of the church ever since I came back in the early 90s.
So
Well,
how?
Not only that, back in those days, if you missed, the deacons would come to your parents and says, what's wrong with that child? Is he sick or something? Do we have to come over and give you a hand or something? They'd always inquire about members, of other families, if their child didn't attend church every Sunday. So it was no secret that your child was going to be hanging out somewhere and not coming to church. It was a family-oriented thing for all the families to look after one another.
I think what's the best thing about First Baptist is we can all say that as young people we were made to come, but as adults we've wanted to come to church and wanted to be a part of our lives and to be a part of our children's lives and our children's lives, as we all have made it a point to make sure the next generation is a part of First Baptist.
So how were your parents and grandparents active in the Guilford community and the church?
I'm told that my great-grandmother Viola played the organ in the church. I know that my grandmother was active on the usher board. I think she called the one group the Women's Auxiliary. I could
Your
have that
grandmother
wrong.
Rose?
My grandmother Rose, I'm
Rose
sorry.
Anderson, yeah.
And she sang on the choir. What was it? The Angelic Voices for many years. And then when I came back to church in the 90s, we sang together on the morning choir, and that was probably the best memories that I've had of church, being in a choir with my grandmother for so many years. But it's been music that has my family connected in church.
My mother, she sang on the choir, and she was also an usher. My mother's name was Romaine. My aunt Edna Mason, she was the pianist at one point for the church. My uncle Hubert Mason was supposed to be the builder for the Doormat Carter Center, but I understand one day a wind came, he put one of the sidings up, is that right, Mr. Frank? And a wind came and blew the whole thing down.
No.
And I think
I
they
heard
decided
that.
to get a different building there.
Well, it wasn't that they decided to get a different builder. They got Douglas Cornell, who was a builder, and they all come together, had meetings, decide to get the building done and done right according to code. At that time, he didn't, which we would call stabilizing it by showing it upright. He didn't show it upright. So you couldn't put a wall up, just leave it hanging there without stabilization, because if a wind came, like she said, and it blew half the siding down because it didn't stable it. But back in then, my mother was on a whole lot of the organizations in the church. She was also deaconess. My father, he was a trustee in the process of helping to build the Doormat Carter Church, which we should have saved to make a museum out of it, but we didn't,
I wish we had a
which is
saving
is a lost part of our history
Yes.
of today.
Exactly.
The old church and the old graveyard, I think we should have saved too.
Yeah, both of
Yeah,
those churches. in the
both of them
cemetery
should have been saved, but
especially
they
the
are-
first building.
they out, the new part of the Guilford outvoted the old part of the Guilford. We didn't have enough votes to overrule them, so they got to tear both of them down, to my disliking. But you have to go along with the majority.
But history is written in the books, and we were actually in, Susie, you remember, Frank also, we actually ate dinner in the first building. Remember we were in Second Church?
And I wonder nowadays, how in the world did
Did
we
we
all
get in there?
get in that little
No.
building? And how did we all have dinner
It
in there?
was 2 rooms.
It was so
2
little.
rooms, yes, and all of us fit in that first building, because it only had 1 room, and then he added on another room. But when family day would come, you know, children's day, all the activities we
We
would
were
have.
all served and we all ate. I guess we
Yeah.
took turns.
I don't
Yeah.
know, but we all fit in that 2-room building. That's amazing to me. And we were just as happy, you know, wasn't nobody saying, get off of me. We were just happy, you know. So, what experiences stand out most in your mind about the Guilford community and Guilford Church? What experiences stand out most?
I mean, I think the thing about it, for me, is just the experience that your friends were your family, and your family, they were your friends, because all of us can say that we come from pretty big families, and not really understanding that you didn't have anything, because everybody was happy. Everybody seemed well cared for. No one was unkempt. We ate healthily. It just seemed like everybody was doing well because everybody looked out for each other. So the experience of just playing with friends on Mission Road and playing with our cousins, the Pays down there on Mary Lane, and Lonnie Pay Jr. would build go-karts, and all of us would pile on those go-karts and go zooming down Mary Lane together, and no one would get hurt. And at that time, we could go right across Guilford Road to Volmerhausen and not worry about a car coming by. But just those crazy, wild things we would do, piling like 4 people on one bike, somebody on the handlebars and somebody on that seat, that bar between the handlebars and the seat, and somebody standing on the little screws that stick out of the tire. We just ride from one house to another, and no one got hurt. And such unsafe things we did, but we did in fun and whatnot. But it was okay because there were dirt paths and roads that we traveled on, and there was no traffic that we got in the way of or anything. But just having good, clean fun and not having to rely on electronics or anything for fun. And it was not realizing you didn't have anything because really in front of you, you had everything. So.
Well, I'm going to talk about one experience in my life that stood out, that it still remains today. Living in this Guilford area, most of the students all went to the same school. But in our community, we had a lady named Miss Madeline Carter, and she didn't want her granddaughter going to the middle school. Her granddaughter was named Joan Carter. And she didn't want her to go to the middle school that everybody else in the community went to, so she fought the Board of Education to send her daughter to a school in Ellicott City, which meant that the children right here, just in this little area where Joan Carter lived, had to go to this middle school in Ellicott City, which meant that we had to get on the bus and pass the school that was so close and go to this middle school. And the experience that I had at that middle school was not a good one because I was the only black girl in my classroom. And I think there were two black boys in my classroom. And everything that happened, I was accused of doing. Like the girl, like if they missed money, the principal would come and have to go through my locker and check everything to make sure that it wasn't in my locker or that I didn't steal it. Or if I passed the test, the teacher would come to me to ask me, did you cheat? Things like that. That was like a bad experience. And like, I remember we were in English class and they were reading about Black history, and I raised my hand. The teacher would not let me read because I was the only black, and I guess she felt bad that I had to read something that happened to, slaves. But that was not a good experience. And then back then the classes went from 7-1 to 7-12, and I was in. You were in a different classroom because you were older, but I was in 7-3. And I even went and begged the school to put me down in 7-12 where all my friends were, or at least all the black students were mostly, but they wouldn't do it, and it was just uncomfortable.
It was uncomfortable, but it to me, it made you stronger.
It did make me stronger, but it was so uncomfortable. And I think I could have learned more that year, but because I had so many obstacles that I had to go through, and it was just like middle school.
I shared that story with Wayne, about what my grandmother did, but things happen in life for a reason. Everything to me, everything that happens to you prepares you for where we are now. You know, that's just how I
Okay,
look
Joe.
at it. What'd you say?
I said, okay, Joe.
I'm sorry, I spoke out of turn, but
But my
that's just
thing,
my opinion.
my thing's about
I hated it too, Susan.
my thing about Guilford, like I said, I was a little different from them because I was segregated the whole way through, and I had to walk from there down here to the hay scales to catch a bus. When we had buses running right past our door with white kids on it that we couldn't ride. And then after that, the word Guilford looked like disappeared because when my last year of high school, they did have a bus that transported us right there to Guilford School, then we transferred from there to go to Tubman to finish my last year. But after that, we got to the thing that everybody would start selling the farmlands out, and the word Guilford looked like disappeared. Rouse came in and brought in Columbia. You don't hear the word Guilford no more. It's just vanished, like we was never on the face of the earth. That was, you ask somebody now, where are you from? You say Guilford. Where's Guilford at? I ain't never heard of no Guilford. Because now everything is Columbia. And to let people just take away your heritage from the time you was born until the day, I mean, just because it came Columbia, Guilford still should be mentioned as part of the Columbia area.
I agree, and that's why we're doing this, so we can keep our history alive in our community.
And another thing about it, like he said, it's fading away, but I remember years ago, like, living in Guilford, we did not have running water.
Oh, yeah.
We had to use outhouses, we had wells. I mean, I think that water could have come through here earlier, but Howard County did not bring water down here through Guilford until they built Guilford Gardens. When they were gonna put that Guilford Garden development over there, that's when that city water came down through this area. I know in 1883, now this is for me, in 1883, I was still going to Miss Madeline Carter's house to get, 1983, I was still going to Miss Madeline Carter's house to get water from her spigot, to take to my house, to heat up the water, to wash my children and myself, and to cook with. There was no running water in the house. And I still had to take that pot, what they call it, out to the toilet to empty it in 1983.
And I can remember,
Go ahead.
I can remember it was in 1976, or about 77, I think, when my grandmother got a bathroom installed in her house. I remember using the outhouse for a good portion of my childhood, and that being the scariest place. But Guilford was like back in time, when knowing that on Mission Road we had bath and running water, but just up the street and down the bottom there was no bath or running water, and and going across to Mr. Ebeck's well to pump water, or going to Cousin Jice to get water from her spigot. My grandmother did not have a bathroom until I was about 8 or 9 years old.
And in my aunt's house, she did have a bathroom, and but they had a what they call one of those tanks.
Yeah.
that, everything went into the tank and then you would have to have it cleaned
Clean
up.
out septic tank.
Mhm. Yeah, I think
But-
my grandmother was one of the last people to get, bathroom. I think she was one of the last ones to get it inside her home.
So like you didn't really know, coming up, I really didn't know what a bathroom really looked like, because in your homes, there were no bathrooms. The bathroom was,
Your bedroom.
exactly,
Pretty much.
your bedroom or the toilet outside,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's true.
You didn't even have a bathroom in your house.
Do you know any stories about the Guilford Quarry, the railroad between Savage and Guilford? Are you aware of any swimming holes in Guilford? Anybody?
I remember my mom saying that they would walk down to, how Guilford Road used to curve around and how that part is a walking path. They must have walked down to an area over there where there was a swimming hole and would swim in that area as children.
And actually, the quarry was down there where Jumbo lived, down. So if you kept straight down Carter's Lane and came all the way down to where the Walkers lived, to Jumbo's property, that's where the quarry was right there. And there was a lot about, but now they built homes on that quarry too, because part of my family, Jumbo, they lived there after that quarry closed up. They lived on that quarry.
Now,
Yeah, but we wasn't allowed to go close to those quarries down there. We went where the iron bridge is in the river.
Mm-hmm.
You walked down past, around that path, and there was a couple big rocks that would back the water up. And when it got hot, we used to go down there and jump in the river to swim. We never swam in the quarry hole. It was always somewhere where it would be a gang of us, where it'd be safe to protect one another.
Mm-hmm.
But the parents would advise you in the beginning, don't go in the quarry hole because it would be your death. Because it was hard to get up out of there, where the sharp edges of the rocks and stuff. So we wasn't allowed. We know where it was at. We went close, but we never was allowed to go in there to swim.
so the quarry, Wayne, it covered a large area, is that correct? Because I heard Susie say down there at the bottom, where Cartersville Road was, Mr. Jumbo,
Mm-hmm.
his property was part of the quarry,
Yeah,
as well as around the corner here?
I think they were separate quarries.
yeah, they separate. Yeah,
Okay,
So there was a quarry at the end of Cartersville?
Yes,
Yeah.
you go all the way down Cartersville now, and then you would make that.
Go to the left.
That first left, yes. And it passed the Walker's house, and then, the property that was over here. Now, I tell you, they had houses on that land.
yeah,
yeah, because they fill those quarries in.
Mm-hmm.
Cartersville.
They built a whole little community on
Yeah.
that land right now.
Cartersville
But when you
Road,
went down there, it was
Thornton
nothing
Woods.
but brick. Because I was wondering how they were going to build houses, because it was nothing but brick, just
Yeah,
brick,
stone.
stone all over the place.
Yeah, I didn't know that, it covered a wide area like that.
No, it didn't. The quarries were
They were separate.
fairly contained, but I guess there were a lot of them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I think Keith had mentioned at the end of that same quarry that you mentioned, and then he said people used to dump stuff
stuff
in there over
Everything.
Yeah, fill it up.
and filled it up.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that, be curious to know where that is specifically now. But
This house is in.
there's a quarry on Guilford Road next to that glass office building
Mhm.
across the street from the bridge.
Yeah, that quarry there was bigger than the one she talking about,
Right.
you know.
That's
He
the one
was
the
like-
Willis worked at, I think.
You dig,
Yes.
they dug out some here, and then they moved over here, and they got another little section and a little section like that. It was about 3 or 4 of them down there where Jimbo was at.
Okay.
And his house used to sit on that little steep hill. I
Yeah.
was like, why would they wanna live there? I mean, cause the back, it looked like if you fall, that was like a steep fall.
Dangerous.
And you were mentioning before about the bridge and railroad tracks, and
Yeah.
you would go across the bridge.
The railroad tracks came up out of Savage, up the river side, right behind where we live at on 9330 Balmer Housing Road, all the way up to that steel bridge to that quarry. And they would load cars out of there and come down there. Today they got a trail path. But for years, when I was a kid, we used to go down there, and the tracks was there, because we used to had to go over the tracks to go fishing. We used to fish in the river.
When did they remove the tracks, or were they just buried under, or?
Well, some of them was buried under when they just put catamize over top of the tracks and never did take them up. And then some of them, when they had a couple of those big storms, they got washed out.
So they would have been there in the 50s and,
Let's see. 50, no, they built them trails after the 50s.
yeah.
So the tracks were still there then.
I think the trails weren't until maybe the official trails, like, you
Yeah,
know, the 80s, I think.
yeah, something like that.
Did you ever walk all the way down past Volmerhausen on the trail to the bridge that used to be across the Middle Patuxent near Savage?
We wasn't allowed, all right, you know where 95 runs across?
Yeah.
All right, if you go up from the Balmerhausen Road up to 95, that was far as our parents would let us walk on that trail. Because it was tracks there, you could still walk the tracks. And then, when they built, that river used to be a lot of water in there, more than it is now. They put a dam on that river, and that's why the river don't have much water flow in it now. But when it rained, it used to be a 1-lane bridge on Guilford Road. You couldn't even get through that because it would always overflow. That's how much water used to run down through there.
It's interesting.
Wow.
So the old Guilford Road that's down there at the park around the corner now, the old Guilford Road?
At the bridge, yeah.
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 Is that where the Crafts lived on that?
No, Crafts lived back down here.
Oh, okay.
Crafts lived down there on this part of Guilford Road.
Oh, okay.
All right, if you go straight across from here,
Where Nazis was.
Right,
well
right.
now, I mean, like it is now,
Mm-hmm.
you know where Janet Hart and them lived?
Yes.
I used to go down there and bend around, and then you had where, I can't think of,
The Wises lived next to the Crafts, right?
that was before that, it was, the Harris, Skip them, used to live down there, and then it came up, it was, John Wise, Crafts, and then you went down farther, Honey Carroll and them lived. It's all, Holland, then before you got to Mission Road, Mr. Henry Moore and them lived right there before you got to there, and then Robert Coleman built a house right next door to them.
Okay.
And you mentioned that there were 3 families on that other side of the bridge that, you know, that was where you were closer to?
Yeah,
And
It was the Curry family, Elsa and the Bradley family, and the Kelly family, which would be Wesley and them, Sir and all of them, their mothers and all of them
Okay.
lived back there in the woods.
I knew.
When did they start to live there?
They was living there when I was a young kid
Hmm.
in the 40s.
Wow.
I was always curious about also your grandfather, Jacob, who worked in the quarry.
Well, my grandfather came from Beaver Dam, Virginia, to Maryland, and then he married Sarah Moore, and then that's where he started working in that quarry.
How long did he work there? Until it closed?
Yes.
Okay.
Then he started working on State Road.
Do you know what he did or have any?
I have no idea.
Okay. I've seen his name an awful lot. You know, including, as I was gonna mention later, including as a trustee of the schools in the area.
Really?
Yes, he was very much of the public schools. He was, Willis Carter and one other were named the first trustees of the school for the black children that they put in Guilford in 1905. That's in the school board records. I can get those records to you so you can see.
Please. Look,
Is it in that book?
please.
I'm sorry, is it in that book?
I did not
Wayne?
know that.
It was in that period of time
Wow.
that the book didn't cover,
Okay, right, yeah, we were talking about.
but are in the school board records, and that's one of the things that attracted me so much to this topic, was so many of the families, both from the quarry and from the farming, were just so adamant about education. Not just to talk, but they volunteered, they were trustees. So the county, the state law said that you needed 3 trustees for every school. And, you know, you see the Coleman name a lot in there, you know, Jacob at the beginning. So, yeah, sorry.
That's
That's
something
okay.
new I learned
The
today.
point, you know, we
But
love-
because
we
I
love-
do know, like, all the families around here, that's something that they did push to the children in the neighborhood. They did push education, like, you need that education. They did push that a lot.
And yeah, that seemed to be, you know, besides church, you know, education was top of the list.
Yes.
You know, top of the
Yes.
list, no matter what they had to do, they would make sure you got some education.
Yes.
You know, so.
But I
yeah.
also would say that Guilford Road connected the communities because you guys have to help me out with the churches, but there's the one church just past Route 1 on Guilford Road,
Asbury.
Asbury, and then when you go up through Simpsonville, that Locust Memorial Church, and then as you keep on going, you end up
Route
out,
1.
and there's so many communities that are connected through Guilford Road, and black churches along the way, and then the children went to the same schools as they all came over this way to Guilford Elementary, and then they all went up to Harriet Tubman from grades 6 to 12. So the road connected the communities too, because my father would have been in Simpsonville, but my grandfather would have been up in Highland and whatnot. So at what's up there, Hopkins.
Hopkins. Well, see, back in the day, before you was born, all the black, they either turned to Cooksville, and when they closed Bill Tubman, they closed Cooksville down. But all the kids from Elk Ridge, Guilford, Dayton, Holland, West Friendship was all bused into the one black high school.
Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing.
Till they, well, my two younger brothers, out of 8 of us, was the only one who went to integrated school. Everybody else went to segregated school.
How were holidays celebrated in your family growing up in Guilford?
Family got together for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. They were the big holidays for us, and we would either gather at my grandmother's house, Kitty Pay's house, and then as my mom got older, her house, for family dinners. For those are the 3 big holidays for us. Then as we got older and Columbia grew, the 4th of July we would get together, and I remember always going to Edna Burley's house to watch the fireworks in Columbia.
The same holidays that she mentioned, we celebrated. Christmas was a big holiday in our house. 4th of July, we always went to my grandmother's house because where she lived, they had a field that the city always did fireworks. So on 4th of July, we always went to my grandmother's house, but we pretty much celebrated the same.
You know, we did too, because it was practically all family up here until we moved back over to the home place in the 50s. We always went from house to house and to my grandmother's house. And the only thing I didn't like about going to my grandmother's house, she used to be strict on us. You had to stay on your P's and Q's in there. She said, it's time for this, time for that. You want to play with a toy or something, you had to put that aside and do what she said.
Oh my goodness. Are there stories about famous or infamous relatives in your family?
The only thing I can remember is that my cousin Dwayne, and I think Dwayne's last name was Harding, was a great basketball player. And he went to UCLA. He didn't stay long.